We'll begin in just a second. Sorry, I forgot to start the train. Okay. So that's going. Got my phone. All right. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Let me just get to my channel so I can see your guys' comments. Okay. Alright, so who do we got today? We got Tyler's here, Daniel, Steve, Ken is here. Hello, everybody. Hello, Isaiah. Ozzy, how's it going? The weather is about 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's pretty sunny outside, actually. So, very nice weather, in my opinion. Very nice day, actually. So, let's see here. Anybody else? Okay, I said hello to Tyler. Hello, Young Ship Maritime Historian. Hello, Pookie Smoochie. Yeah, technology, I know. So I had so many technical difficulties even before it was time to start the stream. And luckily I was able to get it fixed. But then right as the stream needed to start, all of a sudden YouTube was like, we're not connected to your software. And I'm like, what? So I just refreshed the page and it worked. So, but Daniel, how's it going? LMR Trains, nice to see you. Hello, Kevin. Young Ship Maritime Historian says, hi, Alex, I have a question. Did you know that the Queen Mary has a rope room in the bow? Yes, I did, indeed. That's where they kept a lot of the ropes for the mooring lines and other such things. Like, they kept ropes for all sorts of purposes. It was for the rigging, it was for the mooring lines, it was for, you know, just anything that needed, like, rope, as far as I understand, at least. And then there were, like, things like, there was an anchor chain storage. Well, every ship has that, but, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's a huge room and all that, but, yeah, pretty neat. LMR Trains is currently working on my layout, adding ballast and cinders to the track. Nice. Hello, Steve. Good to see you again. Steve, are you at your house, or are you still on the road or something? Because I had something I wanted to ask you, but I didn't want to disturb you if you were on the road. Let's see. Rory says, how goes it? It goes really well, thank you. Yeah, we're gonna start the tea very soon. Where's the lid? I gotta get the lid for the teapot. Hey, Chris Butler, how's it going? Daniel says, Alex, have you heard that the MV Astoria, former MS Stockholm, will be scrapped? Yes, I did, in fact. The day that they announced it, I read the news articles and such about it. Okay, let's see. Let's preheat these. Kevin said I destroyed my freezer. Why? What happened? Let's see. Hello, Rayanne. Good afternoon. Steve says, I'm home till Sunday. Okay. That's good. I will ask you a question sometime after the stream, probably later tonight, because right after the stream I have to clean up and then figure out what I'm going to do for dinner. But yeah, I'll send you a message on Discord. Daniel says, so what do you think of the scrapping? It's really sad. I don't personally have any connection with the Astoria. Is that what it's called again? Where's the... Whatever. The former MS Stockholm. I have no connection to it. I've never researched it. I know that it was a former ocean liner. I know that it's like one of... It was like one of the longest... No, I think it was the longest running ocean liner at sea, if you count the fact of its years of doing cruises and stuff. That's like the basics of what I know, but I don't know anything else about it. Like, I know what the outside looks like. I don't know what the inside looks like. But yeah, I don't know. Kevin says I was mad. Yeah, I bet. How did you do it, though? Daniel says, what's the plate today? Today it's just homemade Scottish shortbread. I was going to try to make an egg sandwich, but I didn't have the time. By the time I realized I had to start getting ready for the live stream, there was no time. It literally takes a whole hour to prepare the apartment for the live stream, because it's a very small apartment. So there's like some YouTubers who they have a corner of their apartment that's always dedicated to filming, so they have their equipment constantly set up. All they have to do is sit down and turn everything on. Well, with me, all the spaces are shared because it's just a little studio apartment. So the whole studio has to be rearranged, all the furniture moved out of the way, everything, all the lights set up. There are 5 different lights set up around the apartment right now, 2 different cameras, 1 microphone. So it's like all the cables have to be unrolled and put, because I don't like having cables strewn about my apartment constantly, so I have to like unroll them out and connect all the cabling and all that. And so it takes a while to get ready for one of these live streams, and then I have to get all the tea stuff ready. Sometimes it has to be washed and stuff like that, so before I can use it. So yeah, it takes a solid hour to prepare for a tea time. And then the model railroad the tracks have to be cleaned before I use them, or else the trains won't run efficiently. This engine has to be oiled before I use it, so because it will squeak like no one believes. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot just to do a tea time. Like, you'd think I could just sit here and have tea with you guys, but it is a lot to set up for a tea time. Right, okay, so we're about to preheat the teacup and teapot. Just waiting for that to finish coming to a boil. Where's the... Pookie Smoochie says, what's the most interesting piece of technology on the Queen Mary in your opinion? That is a good question. Most interesting piece of technology on the Queen Mary. So I have one in mind, but I'm thinking if there's anything else that I think is more interesting than that. I don't know, there's a few pieces that are pretty interesting, actually, now that I think about it. But the number one that comes to my mind is one that I kind of discovered when I was doing research on the ship, which is pretty cool. So, have any of you guys seen the movie, Inglourious Bastards, right? It's done by Quentin Tarantino. If you've seen the movie, there is a scene... And I don't want to reveal too much for those who haven't seen it, but there is a scene where a building gets set on fire by lighting film reel And one of the reasons why that is so interesting is because way back in, like, at least as far as I know, 1930s, probably even before that, those old film reels were extremely flammable. And I guess maybe they were still trying to perfect the technology to make it less flammable, because obviously if they caught fire, it would be a big issue. That a building could burn down. In fact, a couple years back, when the buildings at Universal caught fire, I don't know if it started in the film archives, but it got to the film archives, and those just went up fast because there was a lot of old film, and that film is so flammable, like dangerously flammable. So, on the Queen Mary, in the first class main lounge, they had a projector room for projecting films from the forward end of the room onto the stage at the aft end of the room. And so that film that they projected with was extremely flammable. But on ships, there was a huge concern because, as history would know, fire used to spread very easily on ships. Even today, fire is still like a major worry, more so than just like a normal building, because you're basically trapped on a giant vessel. So if there's a fire, there's nowhere to run, essentially. So, anyway, the point is that those projectors, they knew they had to come up with something to help stop the fire the second it starts. And what's really cool, what they came up with, was a device that is built into the projectors. And if I'm trying to remember just off the top of my head, because I only read through it once, but it was an interesting device that if it was like a vial, like a glass filled with some kind of liquid, not very different from a sprinkler head that uses a vial of liquid inside the sprinkler head. This vial of liquid would come to a boil, and I think it would burst, and it would separate two pins that then filled the projector with an extinguishing powder, if I'm remembering all this correctly. And so if the film caught fire in the projector, it would immediately it would boil the liquid, burst the glass, separate the two pins that hold it together. Those pins being separated would then flood the projector with like an extinguishing powder. And that was their first defense against a fire happening in one of their projectors on the Queen Mary. I haven't done much research beyond that, so I don't know if once that technology was invented, if they moved on and put it in actual movie theaters, in the United States or in the UK. I don't know. But what I do know is that it was one of the most state-of-the-art things on the Queen Mary at the time. But yeah. Let's see, there was another technology that was on the Queen Mary that I thought was really interesting. It was not invented for the Queen Mary, but it was still an emerging technology, which was the Laudaphones on the Queen Mary. The Laudaphones was a system of telephones that ran from various engineering spaces to the bridge on the Queen Mary. And those were designed, and I was just skimming through it the other day, too, just to kind of catch up on it, but I didn't finish reading. But it was a system that electronically was able to remove the background noise from a person's voice. So if you're in the boiler rooms with the loud boilers going and all that, it would be very hard to hear on a normal telephone. So the Laudaphones were designed to cancel out the background noise as much as possible and amplify the noise from your voice that was coming directly into the microphone. And so those Laudophones were instrumental for ocean liners at the time. But one thing I've been curious about, and I don't know if it's if you know, but if someone knows, the phones on the bridge of the Olympic class ships like Olympic and Titanic and so on, were those a form of Laudophone? I'm curious to know, or if they were just a regular telephone. That I'm curious about. But yeah, Queen Mary had Laudophones, so that's an interesting technology. So lots of really interesting stuff on the Queen Mary, and frankly, there is dozens upon dozens upon dozens of more interesting devices that I'm just not recalling off the top of my head. But yeah, pretty neat. J-Rod says, what tea are you having today? Today will be Lady Grey tea. I tried to cycle through the teas evenly, so that way one of them doesn't get left behind and then goes bad and then I've wasted my money. But it is difficult because sometimes I only drink, or, use the loose leaf teas, like, maybe twice a week. And really, you should be going through it more often than that. So, let's go ahead and measure this out. Where is it? Okay. Doc says, I've still got no voice, so I'm also sipping tea with you. Okay. Well, I hope you get better soon. Young Ship Maritime Historian says, Alex, why do some people not like the Russian submarine at the Queen Mary? I can't speak for others, but I can speak for myself. The reason why I don't really like it there is, frankly, it is so poorly kept. Look at it. It looks terrible. No one's taking care of it. And because it's such an eyesore, I don't like seeing it next to the Queen Mary. It makes the Queen Mary look even worse than she already does. You know, I'd like to see a well-kept vessel next to the Queen Mary. I suppose the other thing, too, is that even if it was in tip-top condition, it's still blocking views of the ship. And there's a building next to it, too, that's also blocking views of the ship. So when you walk up to the pier side to take a photo of the ship, what you get in your photo is that darn submarine in your way, and then you get that there's a half-dome shaped building that I think used to operate as the ticket booths for that submarine, because they weren't there originally. I think those were put in the same time as the submarine. So I think those were the ticket booths for the submarine. I don't know for a fact, though. But the submarine and that rundown building are both blocking beautiful views of the Queen Mary that would make wonderful photographs for people visiting the ship. And those, in my opinion, need to be removed. The submarine and that building. I personally don't care what happens to the submarine. If someone wants to save it and take it somewhere else, fine, I'm okay with it. I'm not going to say, like, you know, get it out, sink it. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, sink the Queen Mary. You know, like, so, yeah, I'm not going to say sink the submarine. But at the same time, it's kind of like, you know, like, if they were going to destroy it, I wouldn't be sad in either, you know? Like, I'd be like, okay, great, as long as it's out of there, you know? So yeah, if someone wants to save it, wonderful, save it. But just whatever you do, take it out of there. I don't like it there. It just never belonged there in the first place. But yeah, that's my opinion on that. Isaiah says, why is it going to get scrapped? I want it preserved like the Queen Mary. It is in really, really bad condition. I mean, as far as I've researched into it, it has no structural integrity whatsoever anymore. It is practically like tissue paper. It's a miracle it hasn't sank yet, basically. I have been up close to it. There are holes in the hull all the way around. And yes, I know submarines have a double hull, and that's what's keeping it floating. But the exterior hull is really bad. And in one of the segments of the ship, because there's watertight compartments in the submarine, and in like the furthest aft section, there's a little bit of flooding in there because water has started to come through the inner layer. It's also overrun with raccoons, rats, birds, and I said raccoons. It is completely overrun with animals and destroyed. And from what I hear from insiders, you know, they say that whatever was in there that was for museum quality is slowly being degraded to the point where there's really not much left to save on the inside anyway, just because of the animals and the condition. Like, it hasn't been, you know, like the weather and whatever, since the windows and everything are broken up top and air's getting in and all that. Like, it's all the museum stuff inside, whatever is left, is just not in good condition anyway. So there's literally nothing left for that ship. If the Queen Mary was in that kind of condition, I also would feel hopeless about the Queen Mary. Thankfully, she's not in that kind of condition. But yeah, the submarine, it's at this point, it's just been so neglected. In my opinion, it's now garbage. I mean, and the city thinks so too. The city is like, there's no saving this thing. We can't lift it out of the water or else it'll break apart when we do. We can't tow it anywhere because it's in such bad condition. The U.S. government will not let it be towed because they're afraid it's going to sink and clog up, you know, like a major artery for ships and stuff like that, you know, or maybe it'll leak, you know, really bad. Like right now, they're actually kind of worried that it's leaking harmful chemicals into the water because, you know, it's not entirely gutted. You know, there are still things left from its original in-service machinery and equipment. So there's a lot going behind the submarine. Jeffrey, happy Valentine's Day yesterday. Yes, and to you as well. Tyler says, owner of MV Astoria has denied that the ship was sold for scrap. Yeah, I've heard that too. Chris Butler. Well, she wasn't in service since the start of the pandemic. So actually, she's been out of service since the start of the pandemic. And I think they were going to undergo like a normal refurbishment of the ship. But I think ultimately they just decided that, you know, after doing some reviews of the ship, it was just too expensive to bring it back into service. So I think that's kind of what happened. But yeah, the owner is disputing that it's getting scrapped, but at the same time, there's like some evidence saying that it will be. So I don't know who to believe, but yeah. Sniper Goofy says, happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, Sniper Goofy. Goodbye, says Sniper Goofy. See you later. Sniper Goofy says, why does everyone ignore me? I barely got to your questions. Let's see. Blue Ribbon says, Alex, search for Bright Boy track cleaner in Google, Amazon. It is the best way to clean track. I've actually got something better, Steve, because I have Bright Boy. I have a lot of, and I have other products that are just like Bright Boy. But the thing is, what I discovered is it's not, the track isn't the, okay. Here's something, and it might be helpful to a lot of other model railroaders out there. Yeah, this is hot enough. Let's go ahead and bring that back up to a boil. So, what I learned after doing some research is that with the model railroads, when the locomotive rolls over the track, it has micro sparks, micro arcs is what they call them, of electricity. And it's so small you can't really see it. Maybe if you turned off all your lights and you were in a pitch black room and you stared at the wheels as it was rolling down the track, you might see it. But otherwise it's very, very small. And when those arcs happen, it creates kind of like micro pitting in both the track and the wheels of the locomotive. That allows oxidation to occur because the arcing creates the oxidation. So as the train rolls round the track, you get more and more arcing in various locations, and then the result of the arcing is the oxidation, which creates that black soot that I've been talking about on the track. And you can clean the track every frickin' day if you want. It's gonna come back. There's no stopping it, because the more arcing it does, the worse it gets. And in fact, I found out if you use things like Bright Boy or other scrubbers, the micro abrasions on there make it even worse than it already is. So I discovered a new product. This name is confusing, but I'll try to say it slowly. No Ox ID A Special. And it is a grease designed by a man who is, a avid model railroader. He wanted to resolve the issue of the micro arcing and stuff like that. And he had a business where he created various electrically conductive greases and stuff for various machinery, and he thought, I'm going to create a grease that will help other machinery but also model railroads. So he created this grease here, and it's electrically conductive, and the idea is you tap it very gently to get just a mild film on your finger, and after cleaning your tracks with just, like paper towels or whatever, you clean your tracks, clean the wheels on your cars and locomotives, and you use that grease and you run it down all the tracks. You just want the tiniest film of grease on all the tracks, and then you run your locomotives on the track, and that will actually coat all the metal in this protective grease that will prevent the arcing from happening and prevent the oxidation from happening. There are people who have used this product who have said that in the 11 years, or even 12, one person said 12 years of their model railroad club, in the 12 years since they applied the product, they've never had to clean their tracks ever, except for maybe dust, if like dust bunnies or whatever got on the track. That's what they clean, but they never needed to clean their track because of the micro arcing. And this product was $5. And it will last a lifetime. So this was definitely very good. The only thing is I haven't applied it to my tracks yet, and that's because the tracks still need to... I still need to paint and ballast around the tracks, and I don't want the dirt and stuff to get stuck on the tracks and mix with the grease, because then it has to be cleaned all over again. Then again, it'll probably need to be cleaned anyway. Even if I don't put the grease now, I have to clean it every time I use it, so maybe I'll put it on sometime soon. But yeah, this stuff, no Ox ID A Special. And people who use it have never needed to clean their tracks again. Unless some kind of external dirt force, lands on the tracks, maybe you drop something or whatever, that kind of thing. But otherwise, the tracks themselves will not produce that arcing. And everybody who uses the product... they have sworn by it. I swear this tea time is not sponsored by this company. It's just that I finally found a solution to a problem that has plagued me my entire life. I've spent my entire life scrubbing and cleaning tracks, and only for the tracks to become dirty by the end of the day. So, I'm really looking forward to not having to do that anymore. Okay, so let's go ahead and dump this out. There we go. 4:30. Yeah, that says 4:30. So 5 minutes, everybody, on that. Don't let me... Actually, no, 3 minutes. I forgot. This is Lady Grey tea. It does not brew for that long. 3 minutes on that. So I'm going to watch the time like a hawk, because I do not want to mess up my tea again like I did last time. Alright, so... Brocky, how's it going? I'm doing good. Drew says, hey, I think the Queen Mary is open. Yes, it's open for booked tours. So they are doing free tours that you had to have booked in advance. They're all sold out. So, but yeah, technically speaking, yes, it is open, but it's not open to the general public. You can't drive there right now, walk inside. It won't. It's closed for that. But around April 1st or so, maybe after April 1st, the ship should reopen in its first phase with around at least 100 guest rooms available, at least one restaurant, at least one tour, at least one major exhibit on the ship is open. So if not more will be open. And then in various phases in the near future, the ship will continue to reopen more and more areas, more and more rooms until the whole thing is fully open. That should be by summer or by the end of summer. Doc says, do you ever make tea lattes like chai or London fogs? I don't like London fog, but chai, I make homemade Indian chai. So I have all the ingredients. I have cardamom. I have the cinnamon sticks. They're called Ceylon stick, but you know what I mean, cinnamon. I also have the cloves, and I use fresh ginger, so I chop that up and then put that. And then, is that it for that? Yeah. So when it comes to the spices, that's it. I boil that for about 3 minutes, and then I dump in 2 teaspoons of Indian tea. So I have an Indian tea designed for making things like chai. I dump in the Indian tea, let that boil for 3 minutes, and then I will add a cup of... I use oat milk because regular milk does not agree with my stomach. I'm so lactose intolerant. So I use oat milk, and I let that come to a boil, and then that boils for 3 minutes to flavor the milk in there. And then I will strain that through a tea strainer into I have coffee mugs. I'm sorry, I don't have, like, you know, bigger versions of these teacups. But I strain that into a coffee mug with a generous amount of sugar, because I love sugar in my chai. And yeah, that is a Indian chai tea, and that's what I do sometimes on weekends, just as a morning treat or something for myself. Or sometimes I'll have it after eating Indian food for dinner. So yeah, it's one of my favorite things. Tyler says the Half Dome building was actually a souvenir shop. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Aha. Tea time. It's so fast, wasn't it? Like 3 minutes? Didn't feel like 3 minutes at all. It felt like 30 seconds. I'm being totally honest, but it was exactly 4:30 when I put this tea in there. It is now 4:34. So, man. They say time flies when you're having fun. We must be having a hoot. Alright, let's see. Let's empty out this teacup. So, the Lady Grey tea is the only tea that I don't take with milk, because the milk muddies the flavor. The flavor is very subtle, so this is the only tea that I don't drink with milk. Alright, let's get some sugar. Stephen Hemingway says, who owns the sub? That is what the city wants to know. Who owns the submarine? Nobody is taking responsibility for it. Everybody who owned it in the past says, no, this person owns it now. Here's the documentation. But then that person has documentation saying, no, the other person owns it. So right now, no one is taking responsibility for it. And the reason why is because it'll cost about $2 to $5 million to remove it. So nobody wants to pay that money, especially not the city of Long Beach. Frankly, it shouldn't be up to the city of Long Beach to remove it. That's not their submarine. It's not their fault someone abandoned it there. But they might have to do it. Yeah, you know. But yeah, nobody knows who the owner is right now. So there is currently a legal battle going on over who's responsible for it, and that's kind of working itself out right now. But nobody knows who owns it. So Ozzy says, did the dome was the house for... That's the large dome. So the very large white dome is the one that housed the Spruce Goose. But I was talking about a little black dome that's right next to the Queen Mary. Pookie Smoochie says, just sink the submarine next to the Queen Mary. You can't, because imagine you're looking directly at the ship, right? So the ship is the bow is in front of you, and the submarine is right here, right? Well, underneath the submarine, the land is at a diagonal, and I think the diagonal pretty much ends at the bow of the Queen Mary along the center line of the ship. But there is a embankment under the water. So if you were to sink the submarine in place, it would just tumble underneath the Queen Mary, and during really, really low tides, when the Queen Mary starts to go down with the tide, she will slam onto the submarine, and that could cause damages to the Queen Mary's hull. Worst case scenario, it leads to some kind of water leak, seawater leak. So they can't sink the submarine in the spot. Plus, the submarine, like I said, it does contain dangerous chemicals. There is remnants of fuel left, remnants of lubrication oils. There's remnants of other various materials, you know, stuff that's not good for sea life. So they would have to take it out of the water to gut it entirely, clean it, and prepare it for being sunk in the ocean. But that is kind of the issue, is who's going to take it out of the water? How are you going to do it without destroying it, because it is like so in such bad condition? It's a miracle it hasn't sank yet, because they said in a city council meeting they are worried that if they lift it out of the water, it will break apart. So yeah. So let's see. Drew says, how long will the Queen Mary 2 last for service? Most ships are built with the idea in mind that they will last economically speaking, not structurally speaking, but economically speaking, they will last about 40 years of service. But if, you know, a future developer or even Cunard themselves find a way to refurbish the ship and make her, you know, a good economic investment for the company, they can keep her for longer. Or it can be shorter. Maybe the ship ends up becoming outdated very quickly and becomes too expensive to operate before she reaches that 40 years. So, but technically speaking, a ship, as long as you maintain it, will last forever. Look at the Queen Mary. The Queen Mary is still floating, and, you know, Queen Mary was, you know, the first pieces of steel were laid in December of 1930. So it's, you know, been 92, 93 years, just about. So, so yeah, you know, 92, sorry, yeah. 92 years. So, you know, as long as you maintain a ship, it'll keep floating. So, Daniel says, hey, Alex, I heard there are ON30 train sets that Bachmann makes for Hawthorne Village, and those are the ugliest paint schemes I've laid my eyes on. I haven't seen it, but yeah, I can imagine. There's some pretty ugly paint schemes for stuff. Thank you so much, Robert. Young Ship Maritime Historian says, Alex, does the Queen Mary have room service? Would you know? The Queen Mary in Long Beach had room service, but the last year or two that the ship was open to the public, they stopped doing room service. So, when the ship reopens, I don't know, because it's not the same company that will be leasing the ship. The ship is now 100% in control by the city of Long Beach. They may request of the custodial company that we call Evolution Hospitality. The city may tell Evolution, hey, could you make sure that people have room service when the ship reopens? But I don't know. Nobody's talked about that, so we'll see. Alex in the seaside of Bulgaria says, hello, Alex. I have just one question today. Who was the longest-serving captain of the RMS Queen Mary? And I want to ask more, but today I don't have time. I actually don't know. Because the captains on the Queen ships were in like cycles. So they had like, it's just kind of like being deployed in the military. You're out there for a certain amount of time and then you come back. And it was kind of like that for the Queen Mary. The captains, they rotated. The Commodores, I think, stayed there longer, so the Commodores sometimes would be on the Queen Mary until they were ready to retire or died. But I don't know who. I'm sure there was someone who was on the ship the longest, but I don't know who. Oh, yeah, Doc. Yeah, those are what we call live steam railroads, live steam model railroads. Yeah, we have those all over the country. There's even a big one here in Oregon. It's the largest model miniature model railroad live steam model. What do you call it? It's called Train Mountain. I don't know if it's an actual mountain, but they call it Train Mountain, and it is the largest one in the country here in Oregon. I don't remember where, probably near Bend. And yeah, it's huge. There are miles and I think like something like 12 miles of track laid all around this large park. And you just, you squat down and sit on the little trains and then they take you around. I used to like riding them over at there's one called the Los Angeles Live Steamers. That's in LA at Griffith Park. That's not to be confused with the Griffith Park Model Railroad Club, because that one you have to pay to get on. But the Los Angeles Live Steamers are free. They just ask for donations. But yeah, that one I used to like riding. But yeah, it's, yeah. Blue Band says, do you have nickel silver rail or brass? I have nickel silver. Brass rails are a high quality, but they need a lot of maintenance. Let's see. Drew says tea time. Yes, indeed, tea time. History Adventures says, hi, Alex, just tuning in. How are you? I am doing great. How about yourself? Young Ship Maritime Historian says, Alex, what was Easter like on Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth? If you were of a Christian faith, then you would have a special like Easter service in the drawing room, or if you were in second class, you'd be in the second class library, because that turned into a place for services. But there was a special Easter service done by the ship's onboard priest, possibly even a minister. I'm not really sure what you call them. I'm not not much. I don't know about religions, but yeah, there was a special service, and I think if you were in first class, possibly even all three classes, they might have had, you know, like a special dinner, like a goose or something. But I think that's the extent of it. I don't think there was things like hunting for Easter eggs, which I think might be just an American thing. I don't think that's a British thing. But yeah, it wasn't like a huge celebration. It was just kind of like, you know, traditional how you celebrate Easter. You go to your morning, you know, you go pray and all that stuff. So yeah. Hello, Manny. How's it going? Octarian says, "Hey Alex, how are you today?" I'm doing great. Mark is here. Hello, Mark. Oh, no problem. I know. Yeah, I know people are busy. It's all right. Drew says, will you visit the Queen Mary when it opens? And if you do, you should do a video about room B340. I feel like I covered enough of B340 in my other video about whether the Queen Mary was really haunted. So I think I covered enough. I don't think I need to go back to B340 and make a video specifically about it. Let's see. Chilling in the Frozen North says, I just started at 25 minutes. Does the micro-arcing occur at the rail joints? Micro-arcing occurs everywhere. All down the entire length of the rails. And yes, my rails are soldered, and that's just for better electrical connection. I mean, you want the powered rail to transfer power to the next rail, so you have to solder them together. So that's not the problem. The problem is just that, you know, have you ever flipped a light switch, right? And if you flip it slowly, you can hear the electricity go, just like a quick click, like that. You hear it when you flick a switch. That is that's an arc. That's what happens when you flick the switch, because there is a moving object on the rails. The wheels of the locomotive is the moving object. It creates micro-arcing, and I know it may seem like, well, the wheels are always in contact. Not always. I mean, there are little imperfections in the way the train locomotive moves versus the track's shape. The train does not perfectly sit flat as it goes down the rails. Sometimes you'll see it bobbing around like that. That little bit of motion is enough to create micro-arcs. You know, so it's things like that. But also, you know, if the train's flanges, if it's going around a curve and the train starts to ride high on the flanges, it can create micro-arcing, that kind of thing. It's all normal. It's all normal. But nevertheless, it happens. And that's one of those things that you have to look out for. Let's see. Gamer says, what's your opinion on capitalism? It's not a perfect system, but it's not a bad system. Chris Butler says, maybe a video on the underappreciated B338 next door. They're fed up with the noisy neighbors. Yeah, I imagine they would be. I mean, people who stay at B340, they're there because either they believe it's haunted, or they're there to capitalize on it being haunted, or just to have fun, you know, like. But nevertheless, the people that stay in B340 are unbelievably noisy neighbors to the folks next door, and I feel bad for people staying in B338. Yeah, it's not, for anybody that's wondering, B340 is not a real haunted room. It's not. All the stories that are told about it are either misconstrued or fake. So it's just not, it's not real. Drew says, why don't you drink tea with milk? I do. But this is the only tea that I don't drink with milk, because this is Lady Grey tea. It is a really, what's the word? It's a really delicate tea. The flavors are very, very subtle, and when you put milk in it, there's no flavor at all. It becomes bland. It tastes like milk. And so I've tried it. The very first time I had this tea, I took a sip of it before the milk, and then I added milk to it, and then the flavor was completely gone. Just gone. Obliterated. No more flavor. And so I realized you can't have milk with this tea. There's no point. There's no flavor. And it's a very, like I said, very, very delicate tea. So it's not like I'm drinking it and it's really strong. It's not at all strong. It's very, very light flavor. It's like flavored water, essentially. So yeah, this is the only tea that I will not have milk with, because it'll just destroy the flavor. So yeah. Let's see. Russ says that the sub is forfeit. City owns it by default. They may, but they're not willing to shell out millions of dollars to get rid of it. So that's the thing. So that's what I was explaining a couple months ago in a live stream, was that if it costed $5 to get rid of the submarine, then the city would say, okay, it's ours, and then get rid of it, right? $5, not a problem. Problem is they're estimating it'll cost $5 million. To put that into perspective, the city just recently invested $1 million into the Queen Mary. That $1 million is going to help change floors out in certain rooms. It'll help with the cleaning services of the kitchens on the ship. It'll help with some of the repainting in some of the various rooms on the ship. And it will help with repairing lighting across the ship. Maybe not the whole ship, but in areas that need lighting repairs. That $1 million can do a lot of work. But to throw something away like the submarine, to literally throw it away into the garbage, will cost them $5 million, or up to $5 million. That's not something people want. I mean, how many people, it's like dumping, a broken down car on your front porch and being like, okay, hey, now you need to pay to get rid of it. And it's like, no, you don't dump this here and then ask me to pay to get rid of it. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. Is if it costed $5, the city probably wouldn't have any issue, but it costs $5 million to get rid of it. So the city's kind of like, no, we're gonna find who's responsible and they're gonna pay for it. So that's kind of what's going on here. Chloe says, Alex, always enjoy your videos. I cannot just keep watching the news, and often there is nothing on television. Thank you for your time and effort and kindness, Seattle. Thank you so much, Chloe. I do my best. And hello from Portland. Young Ship Maritime Historian says, Alex, did you know that there is a mini dome next to the Queen Mary? There's a few, like a true honest-to-goodness dome. There is the old dome that used to house the Spruce Goose. But I don't know what you would consider mini. Like, to me, a mini dome would be, like, the size of a house. But to some people, a mini dome would be something that's, like, the size of a shopping mall. Because there's larger domes out there. I don't know what you mean by mini dome. Steve says, it's amazing how no one wants to claim ownership of the sub when there are financial responsibilities needed for removal, but the moment the sub is scrapped, someone will sue the city for scrapping. Exactly. That is beautifully put. That is exactly what's going to happen. As soon, no one's going to want to take responsibility for the submarine because they have to pay to get rid of it, but as soon as it is gotten rid of, someone will try to sue the city for scrapping it. Yeah. Well, that's good, Tyler. Young Ship Maritime Historian says, Alex, I want them to put the Spruce Goose in the Queen Mary's dome again. You know, so the thing about the Spruce Goose, it belongs in Long Beach. It was built in Long Beach. It flew in Long Beach. It sat in Long Beach for forever, until 1992, essentially. It belongs in Long Beach. But the problem is that it will not survive in Long Beach. It will always be in danger of having to be moved or destroyed if it goes back to Long Beach. I don't think, if the past has taught us anything about historical things, historical vessels, like the Queen Mary, like the Spruce Goose, it's that those kinds of things aren't taken care of very well in Long Beach for various reasons. It's not always the same exact reason, but for various reasons. And I am a strong believer in learn from your mistakes. Some people insist, no, bring the Spruce Goose back to Long Beach. Well, what happens if history repeats itself? So far, we know it's in great shape, and it's being very well taken care of by the Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum in McMinnville, Oregon. They're doing a great job, and they've been doing a great job, and the Spruce Goose is in phenomenal condition. I have a video walkthrough of the Spruce Goose on my channel if you guys want to see it. It's amazing. Yeah, it's... If the Queen Mary had been moved to Oregon and was being taken care of, and someone said, move it back to Long Beach, it's been there all its life, you know, like, I would say, you know, that would be a great nostalgia trip, but it probably would not work out for the best. History repeats itself, you guys. History repeats itself. So, hello, Malibu Company. Doing great. I'm doing the best I can to avoid the ghost topic, you guys. Malibu Company, every time they join, I'm usually always talking about ghosts on the Queen Mary. Let's see. Soviet Union Ball says, hey Alex, what's your impression of the Queen Anne, Cunard's newest cruise ship? I don't like it. Not at all. First of all, I'm not a fan of cruise ships. I'm sorry, you guys. I like ocean liners, but I don't like cruise ships. Cruise ships, they don't appeal to me. There's nothing about cruise ships I like. I don't think they're pretty. I don't think they're nice looking. To me, they look like giant office buildings just floating on the water. So I don't see any beauty or interest or even engineering interest in cruise ships. That's the first thing. But the other thing too is that I could at least show some interest in ships like the cruise ship Queen Elizabeth or the cruise ship Queen Victoria, because the interiors have an old-fashioned design. One of them is like an Art Deco design. The other one is not so much Art Deco as it is kind of like a recreated sort of Edwardian look. But the interiors, I'm like, okay, all right, you know, those are nice interiors for a cruise ship. Queen Anne, though, is very much modern. There is very little historical features. You know, they have a pub that's going in that probably looks the most historic on the entire vessel, but that's about it. You know, if I had to describe the interiors of the Queen Anne in one word, I would say it looks like a refrigerator. Looks like if I opened a refrigerator, a really fancy refrigerator that cost a lot of money, that's what I would expect to see inside. I don't like it. Sorry, you guys. I don't like it. Drew Doherty. I believe it. Yeah. There's a lot of people that do, like, horrible stuff. Miles says, Alex, did anyone live on the Queen Mary for any length of time? Or was there one person known to have taken the most trips on her? When it comes to living on the Queen Mary, to my knowledge, there is only one person that I have ever come across in my research that has lived on the Queen Mary, besides a crew member. And that would actually be the director, I believe the director of public relations for Urban Commons. When the ship closed for the pandemic, the director of the company came and lived on the Queen Mary with his dog. I think it was a Chihuahua, if I remember correctly. He was living there for several months. He was living in a suite on B deck, I think, possibly A deck. And the whole time I'm thinking, did he, when the dog needed to go to the bathroom, did he actually take the time to walk the dog all the way off the ship to let the dog go to the bathroom off the ship? Because that's a long way down. Or did he just take the dog to the sun deck or something? I don't know. But yeah, that's the only person that I know of that ever lived on the Queen Mary. He lived on there for several months, maybe a year. And he was actually seen in the Ellen DeGeneres show. Ellen DeGeneres did an episode during the pandemic where they did ghost hunting on the ship. And that guy who was living on it came to meet the crew of the Ellen DeGeneres show. And he was walking down the hallway with his little dog. So he was wearing, like, sandals or something. And I'm like, you're the director of a major company and you're dressed like this to meet with the public? Like, it's just weird. But yeah. Peter Double. Hello, Peter. For people closer to Portland, there's a good live steam train park in Molalla, Oregon as well. Nice. I haven't heard of that, actually. I'll have to look it up. Doc says, that is so cool. I think my son, 6, is really getting into the live steam railroad thing. We have been 2 times now. I see many Saturdays there in my future. Yeah. That's actually kind of nice to know that, you know, the kids can still appreciate model trains and stuff like that, because, you know, it's always been my passion in life, model trains, both live steam and, you know, indoor home models and stuff. So a lot of kids these days are really interested in video games, though. Granted, there is something called Railroads Online, which is a really cool video game for playing trains, so... Chris Butler says, Alex, what is the most beautiful railroad locomotive ever? Your correct answer, of course, is the SP Daylight. But maybe you have another idea. I don't, the Daylight, no. I don't think it's ugly. By no means. I have seen ugly locomotives. But I prefer smaller, older steam locomotives. I think the most beautiful steam locomotive... It would have to be my favorite, which is, you know, the Disneyland Railroad No. 3 Fred Gurley, Baldwin Steam Locomotive Works build from 1894. It is a 244T Forney-style locomotive, and it is in current operation at Disneyland in Anaheim, California. So that is my favorite. I love Forney engines. They're my favorite type. And then of all the Forney engines I like... that is the most beautiful, in my opinion. So, yeah, I would have to say that. But if I had to choose one that is outside of a Disney park, it would probably be the... I don't remember the name of the railroad, but the Leviathan number 63. It's a 440. The York is very similar to the Leviathan. So, the York would be my next one, next to the Leviathan. So, yeah, I would say that. Maritime Historian says, Alex, if the RMS Olympic still existed, I think it would be cool if they put it on Port J by the Queen Mary. You think they would be a good idea? If the RMS Olympic still existed, I would be elated. I would be very happy. But no, I think it would be a bad idea to put next to the Queen Mary. And that goes back to a conversation I had with somebody else on this channel. I recognize their username and their username image whenever I see them, but remembering that name, I can't remember the name. But we've had conversations many times in the past about what's the terminology? My brain is not thinking right now, but if you have too much of one type of tourist attraction in an area, just too much of it, your business across the entire part of that industry will go down. Because you're providing too much. It's kind of like a supply and demand thing. If there was a very limited number of this Scottish shortbread that I was selling, and there was a lot of people wanting it, then I could sell it for a good amount of money, and it'll be very, very popular. Lots of people will be lining up to see it, and that would interest more people to line up and buy it and see it, you know. But if I opened several shops in the same area selling very similar Scottish shortbread, maybe not the same recipe, but very similar, well, that would start to thin out the demand for it. And next thing you know, the original person, me selling the Scottish shortbread, would lose money on it. And so, because not less people are wanting to come and buy it. The Queen Mary is very unique in Long Beach because she's the only ship of her kind in Long Beach. In fact, she's the only ship of her kind in the United States. So, you know, so the demand for the Queen Mary, whatever is there, is very reliant on the fact that it's one of a kind. If you put another ship, even somebody asked if the Queen Elizabeth was still around and you put it next to the Queen Mary, what would happen? It's the same response. Both businesses would tank because there's already a limited demand for the Queen Mary. And if you have to share that demand, both would tank. And so that would be a problem. But even more so, the Olympic is Titanic's sister ship. So, and everybody loves Titanic. Everybody knows Titanic more than they know Queen Mary. So if you put Olympic next to the Queen Mary, what's going to happen? Favoritism towards the Olympic. Queen Mary will definitely tank. And we'll have to say goodbye to the Queen Mary forever. So yeah, it's not a good idea to put so many things that are so similar right next to each other and try to run the business. So if the Olympic was ever brought back, send it to Belfast or Liverpool or Southampton, and it will make a very good tourist attraction there. J. Rod says, how many minutes did it take to start the Queen Mary's engines to start? Well, probably somebody could go into more detail than I could because I'm still learning that part of the Queen Mary. But to my understanding, I can't tell you a time frame, but I'll tell you what happens. When the Queen Mary would come into port, the engines would never stop moving. They would go into like a very, very dead slow. Like, it's considered not in active service, but it's still moving. And so the engines would keep turning. And if they did have to completely shut down the turbines, because maybe they needed a quick check before they set off again, then they would shut down the turbines, but they would actually keep the propeller shafts rotating. And they have a machine inside the Queen Mary. It's a little engine. I don't remember if it's a reciprocating engine or not, there should be 4 of them in total. But it was designed to slowly turn the propeller shaft. What was it? How many revolutions? I don't remember the revolutions. Very slow. Dead slow. Like a snail crawls faster. But it was designed to keep the propeller shafts moving. Some people say that it's because if you leave the propeller shafts sitting in one spot for too long, they will sag, and that will create issues when it starts rotating, because then it'll start rotating and, you know, go crazy. I don't know if that's true. Maybe it is, but I do know they had to keep the propeller shafts rotating, even if it was a very, very dead slow speed. And so they had little engines that would do that if the main turbines were not moving. And then when there was time to get it going from that slow-moving position, they would start putting steam through the turbines. From what I understand, the turbines would start spinning very slow, and then they would engage the gear to the main shaft. And once that happened, the shaft would suddenly go and start spinning all of a sudden, enough to actually damage the teeth on the gear that was connected to the little engine that was turning it slowly. So that is my understanding of it. How long it took to do that, I don't know. No. Drew says, why did Long Beach remove the Queen Mary's lifeboats, and will they bring new lifeboats on the ship? Oh, it's a really long explanation, but let me see if I can try to summarize it. What are they called? The davits that held the lifeboats, those connected all the way down to the promenade deck, the actual floor of the promenade deck. Those supported the davits, which included the weight of the boats and part of the weight of the sun deck above. Those had rotted pretty badly at the bottoms where the davits met the promenade deck. Rotted there pretty badly, to the point where, as my friend Steve would tell you, some weren't even connected to the promenade deck anymore. So all that weight was being transferred to the side shell plates, the windows along promenade deck, which is why the windows were cracking, the metal plates were separating from the ship. That was causing a structural issue. There was too much weight on the area because the davits were rotted at the bottom. So to prevent anything further from happening, they removed the lifeboats off the Queen Mary to alleviate some of that weight. In fact, they were able to remove... Oh, I don't remember. I think I counted it was something along the lines of 15... No. I don't remember. I'm sorry. I don't remember how much... I don't want to guess because I'm afraid I'm going to guess wrong. They removed a lot of weight from the ship to the point where the ship is actually sitting 1 foot higher out of the water. That's how much weight they removed from the Queen Mary. I know because I checked it. I have a photograph of the waterline of the ship, and you can see how far the ship rose out of the water since they removed all the lifeboats. It's about 1 foot out of the water. They removed a lot of weight by removing those lifeboats. That should prevent any further damages happening to the promenade deck for the time being, until that can be repaired. The lifeboats were then put into the parking lot. I'm not going to go through the huge drama that me, Steve, and QMI Restore the Queen had to go through to try to save the lifeboats. That's a whole story of its own. But essentially, they could not... There was no ability to save the lifeboats. We tried. Really, really hard. We tried. But I would have to credit Steve in the chat. He's Blue Ribbon Production. I have to credit him because he did contact the city of Long Beach, and through the efforts of months of convincing, was able to get the city of Long Beach to at least look at preserving some of the lifeboats. So what we know is that we have lifeboat number 2 on Davit 2 is still on the ship. That is an accident lifeboat. It's sitting on the port side of the ship. Then you have lifeboat number 3 that is on the starboard side. It is a normal sized lifeboat, larger. That is also preserved and sitting on the ship. Those will eventually be restored, so that way visitors who walk by underneath or next to it will be able to see it. Then there is lifeboat. The city says it's lifeboat number 11, but anyway, the city says it's lifeboat number 11. It's sitting on the dock next to the Queen Mary as we speak. That lifeboat, from my understanding, is currently undergoing some kind of restoration, so that way when the ship reopens to the public, people can walk around it and take pictures with it. And then the city allocated 5 more lifeboats for preservation. Those lifeboats were then moved to somewhere on city property for preservation in the future. Not right now, but in the future. So those are off. The other lifeboats, I can't do math in my head, but there's a great number of lifeboats besides those 8. All those were scrapped, destroyed, and thrown away. To my understanding, they weren't even melted down because they're not worth it in metal. They are so degraded. The cleaning process alone would be too expensive to preserve it. So as far as I know, they were thrown away. They were just destroyed and thrown away. So will the city of Long Beach put new lifeboats back? It's a possibility. It's not on the table right now, because right now the biggest thing is making the ship safe. So the safety right now, all the restoration work for safety is superseding looks. And so most of the money that has been spent recently on the restoration of certain things of the ship have been for safety purposes. Some money has been allocated towards beautifying the ship. You know, one of the things that I know that they're going to do in the coming months, or probably the year, will be that they're going to sand down the entire promenade deck and restain it back to the color that it should have been in the 1930s. So that's actually a major plus. That's a major plus, because the current color is not the way it looked in the 1930s. You know, there are some aesthetic things that are being fixed, especially if it's aesthetic and yet it comes to safety, like broken light fixtures. You need the ship well lit so people don't fall, you know. Sorry. So yeah, you know, so those things are being done. So there's certain areas of flooring on the ship that are lumpy and can be a tripping hazard. Those will be, the flooring will be removed, new flooring put in place that the city says will look original, but that could be a very broad definition, so I don't want to make any assumptions that it'll look like the 1930s or the 1940s. Let's not make assumptions, but it's good to at least know that they're going to try to make it look original in some way. So yeah. But if they were to put back replica lifeboats, that would probably happen 5 to 10 years from now. So not anytime soon. Doc, a lot of people have wondered whether or not the Queen Mary could be converted to condos or apartments. I think, you know, with enough money, anything could be done, but there is a huge issue with that. People start fires in their houses, you know, and there is a huge risk that people will do unsafe things in their apartments that will cause permanent damage to the ship. The other thing, too, is that if anybody who owns a motorhome, they'll probably know that you can't permanently live in your motorhome. I mean, you could if you were to, like, escape the law in certain ways, if you know how to do it. But you can't permanently live in your motorhome because Motorhomes are not designed for permanent living. They're designed for temporary living. So if you've ever been stopped by a cop, it's like, you can't, you know, like, how long have you lived in this motorhome? You know, like, I think it's got a maximum of like 4 consecutive months or something like that. It's the same thing for things like hotels. If you're going to make a hotel into condos, it's going to take a lot of work for conversion because you can't just live in it. It's not designed for living. So it would need major work to convert it for living, which would destroy its historic significance. You can almost bet that there would be a major transformation from its historic look and appearance to something entirely modern and new. So yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to turn the Queen Mary into apartments or condos, because everything you love about the ship would change. So, Chilling in the Frozen North says, is micro-arcing a problem on regular electrified railroads? Micro-arcing is a problem, but the biggest problem is actual arcing. Because if you've seen a subway go down the tracks, you've seen large electric sparks. If you've seen electric railroads or electric streetcars with the pantograph on the top, if you look long enough, especially at night, you'll see the arcing, large bright arcs of electricity. That wears down the pantograph and the cable itself. That needs constant replacing and changing. So it is a huge problem for electric transit. But you know, they have maintenance budgets, so they can fix that. Let's see. Chris Surfaz says, hey Alex, I was rewatching the film 1984. Seen a similar steam locomotive from your most recent video you did. Interesting. I don't remember 1984. I don't. Just going past comments, people are talking to each other, so I don't necessarily need to read them out loud. Tyler. I mean, that's a decision for you to make. Sorry, I don't know what to say. I try to stick to comments that have to do with my channel. I don't know. I can't really help you with your personal relationships. Let's see. Metal Rider says, why are they getting rid of the submarine? Well, they haven't done it yet, and there's no plans to do it yet. But they want to, and the reason, again, I don't want to go into it, because we just talked about it like a few minutes ago. I don't want people to leave. But essentially, it's in really bad condition to the point where it's a miracle that it hasn't broken apart or sank. So it is really bad. Really, really bad condition. Chris Butler says, I'm not permitted to express my opinion on Queen Anne. Yeah, I can imagine why. boy, I think I know why, yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Captain. Steve says, the famous Captain Gregory that worked for Rather Corporation on the Queen Mary also lived on the Queen Mary. He had a special apartment on B deck aft. Interesting. I didn't know that. Ozzy says, is Mr. Squeakers in the garage still? No, actually, Mr. Squeakers is right here. It's Squeaky, by the way. Mr. Squeaky. Yeah, it's already squeaking right now. Yeah. Steve says, also Joe Prevratel was living in the Queen Mary on the Royal Suite in M Deck for a while when he was getting a divorce back in 1996. So it sounds like it's actually not unheard of for various company officials or executives to live on the Queen Mary for a while. Yeah. Carter Asher says, in the camera shot back of the Queen Mary looked like the SS Poseidon. Well, that's because the SS Poseidon was the Queen Mary. They filmed on the Queen Mary. The model of the SS Poseidon they used for the movie was like 99% the Queen Mary as she appeared in Long Beach. So yeah, it essentially is the Queen Mary. Carter Asher says, are you going to New York for 9/11? No. No, it's expensive to go to New York. And Chip says, why do modern cruise ships look so ugly? Actually, why is modern design of everything so poor? Design and beauty are... what's the word? It differs from person to person. Some people think certain cruise ships are very, very beautiful. You know, I mean, it's entirely subjective. There we go. It's entirely subjective. But I will say that the exterior and engineering of cruise ships are designed the way they are to maximize profit, and also in ways that just make the most sense for what the business is. So, yeah, you know, cruise ships, they don't care necessarily about what the outside of the ship looks like, as long as it doesn't look like it's, you know, gonna catch fire any second. Then otherwise they're happy with how it looks, as long as it looks freshly painted and clean. That's what they care about. But the shape, the design of the exterior is not a big issue for them, because they know their passengers don't have to look at the outside of their ship when they're on it. You know, they're on it, they're looking at the inside of the ship. So that's what they're more concerned about. So but yeah, it's all about just business. You know, it's just business. Rena Rosales, yeah, I've seen that too. Thank you so much, Doc, for joining us. We'll see you next time. Steve says, on electric rail lines, the overhead catenary is purposely positioned in a zigzag pattern so that it won't wear a groove into the pantograph wiper. Ozzy says Mr. Squeaker's retired in the garage. No, Mr. Squeaky is right now running. That's the one that's moving. It's not retired. Oh, finally, I've caught up with all the comments. Carter Asher says, do you like the Andy Griffith Show? I haven't watched it since I was a child, so I actually don't know. Ryan Hines, very nice. Thank you very much for asking. How was yours? Daniel says, hey, Alex, what do you think of the Glenbrook 260 Mogul? It's okay. It's not anything for me to, go crazy about. It's okay. Chris says, Alex, good thing you don't have Gomez Adams helping you with your layout. I know, right? I would be so upset if all my stuff was destroyed. Empire of Waterloo says, good afternoon, Alex. I hadn't realized that there was a ship based on the Queen Mary in a movie. Very interesting. Is that a good movie? Oh, yeah. The original Poseidon Adventure from 1972. Very good movie. A very old movie, but very good movie. And definitely heavily influenced by the Queen Mary. In fact, the story itself was written by Paul Gallico, who was inspired to write the story based off of a voyage he had on the Queen Mary, where the ship was struck by a rogue wave that caused the ship to kind of, to list heavily to one side. And so he kind of got, his inspiration from that. And yeah, so the Queen Mary is the Poseidon. But the Queen Mary has also been used for a lot of other movies and TV shows, particularly as a ship. So there's a Netflix series. I don't remember what it's called. But the Queen Mary is the major design influence for the ship on that series. There is a series coming out on Disney Plus. It's season 2 of something where it takes place aboard the Queen Mary for a whole season. So they've filmed on the Queen Mary and outside the Queen Mary, so you can actually see the ship in the movies. They've used the Queen Mary in a lot of stuff, a lot of films, movies. The Queen Mary was used in a music video. So yeah, pretty cool for a music video for a song. So pretty cool. Yeah. What? Chris says, hey, Alex, what do you think that people on board a cruise ship seeing my floating home RMS Britannic 2 and modern day clone copy of old ocean liner design? I don't know. They probably think it's pretty cool, I guess. Ryan, awesome. That sounds great. Daniel says, what about Eureka 440? Eureka is pretty cool. It's a little weird looking, in my opinion, but like weird shaped, I should say. It's shaped very weird. But I like the Eureka ultimately. Yeah, it's a pretty little engine. Dangerous Brian says, how is the construction of the model caboose coming along? Since the last time I worked on it, I haven't had time. So there's been no progress since the last time you saw it. So, but yeah, hopefully I'll have time soon to do that. Ozzy says, were you talking about 1899, which ran for only one season? No, the Queen Mary was not used for 1899. It was used for another show. I want to say the show was either Spanish or Portuguese. I don't remember. High Seas. It's for the show High Seas. So the ocean liner used in High Seas was heavily inspired by the Queen Mary. particularly the exterior of the ship. So yeah, high seas. Yeah, it's all cold. All my tea's cold now, so I don't want to drink anymore. Daniel, because the Eureka is really, really narrow and really, really tall. It looks weird to me. Oh, Ken, that's a very good question. So, originally the Queen Mary was heated using forced air. So, they had forced air vents all over the ship, which drew air into fan rooms. The fan rooms, they had heat coils inside the various I don't know what to call the machinery, but the machinery that blows the air, the fans, you know. And so they had heat coils in there. That's what heated the air. And that was supplied to all the rooms. And with the turn of the valve on the punkalouver, you could either increase the warm air or increase the cool air, or have both blowing, so you can actually adjust the temperature of the air, because it had cold air blowing and hot air blowing. And then you could adjust the punkalouver, and it would either make the hot or cold air come through. So just like having, you know, a single handle on your tap in your kitchen, you can adjust the hot and cold that way. And so yeah, it was a heat coil. Today, the air conditioners that are installed on the ship, they provide the hot and cold, but they always provide the same temperature. So I don't think you could I don't think that you could set your room temperature to extra warm. I don't think you can do that. It's always the same temperature that comes out. But on the Queen Mary, certain second and first class rooms also had a radiating heater in the rooms. So instead of having a little fireplace, you had a permanent space heater. And so you could actually turn on the space heater, and it looks like a little miniature fireplace, kinda. And that would provide the extra heat in your room if you wanted. So that way, you know, the punkalouvers, you could get the hot and cold air, but yeah, you could also use the space heater. So not every room had those, though, and I think the rooms that didn't have them were the rooms that had the hot and cold punkalouvers. But then the rooms that had the space heater, you only had one type of punkalouver, which was cold air. So I don't really know. I'm still learning how it all works. But yeah. Daniel, well, it's only my opinion. I don't expect you to agree with me because, like I was telling everybody just a few minutes ago, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You know, there are some people that think cruise ships are beautiful. I don't. There are some people that think, you know, certain flowers are beautiful. I don't. You know, like if I had to choose between, like if I had to choose what was more beautiful, a flower or a tree, I would choose a tree. I would think a tree is more beautiful than a flower. So it's that kind of thing. Like I don't expect you to agree with me. You know, I personally just think that the Eureka looks oddly shaped. But that's just my opinion. Empire Waterloo, yeah, that's the Eureka made for the Eureka and Palisade. Currently, the Eureka is privately owned, and the owner sometimes takes it to various narrow gauge railroads to run it. Chris. Yeah, I know, Chris. Alright, so... I gotta end the live stream soon. I don't want to go for multiple hours like I did last time. You know, my tea got so cold. I was really looking forward to drinking it, but... So I won't be able to have a history video out this week. There just wasn't enough time to produce one. So I think Friday I'll probably do a live stream of some kind. Maybe exploring the Titanic, maybe, you know, I don't know. I have a few other things I could do that are related to the channel. But yeah, so there won't be any history videos this week. But you can look for one next week. I think this Sunday I will do a tea time on Sunday. Who knows? Maybe Friday I'll work on the caboose more, maybe, or something. Daniel says, Alex, do you think that your views are getting better? Yes. There's definitely been an improvement because the biggest problem is, like, when you produce content for people, you need to know who is watching. For the longest time, me and my friends did not know who the major demographic was on my channel. So I was making content that was just whatever I wanted to make, right? And you would think that would be a good way to run a YouTube channel. You would think, like, oh, just make whatever you want to make. Make what makes you happy. But if you want the channel to be successful, you can't do that. You have to make something that appeals to the people who are watching. Or else they don't watch. And so, for the longest time, many years, I did not know who was watching, how old they were, and what other channels they watched. But in the last year, YouTube has come out with more and more features that help creators to know those things. And so... Oh, Steve is leaving. Okay, Steve, I'll talk to you later. I have to fix dinner and stuff, too, after the live stream, so I won't be available till later. But yeah, I'll message you later. And see you later, Chris Butler. But yeah, so finally, after years, we were able to understand who's watching my channel. And it's a majority of folks 65 and older who are male, and... you know, and we know what channels they watch. We've seen there's a list of channels that shows the majority of what the viewers watch. Finally, the technology has caught up enough that we can figure that out. So now that I know, I can make content that fits those viewers. And I've been able to do that, and therefore it's made a huge difference. A huge, huge difference. So... at the moment, I'm not worried about views anymore, because now I have enough to keep doing what I want to do. So, yeah. See you later, Chris Surface. Alright. What am I going to do for dinner? I have to figure out the groceries and all that. I'll probably have to go to the store. I don't want to do that, but... Anyway. Alright, folks. Well, I'm going to end the live stream because I've run out of things to say. You've run out of things to say. We've come to the natural conclusion for the night. Stay tuned for some kind of live stream on Friday. I don't know what yet. We'll do another tea time on Sunday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. And yeah. Alright, folks. No, I don't have anything else to say. I was trying to think if there's any other announcements I had to make, but nothing. Alright, folks. Well, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.